Now, if you look at Shore Temple in Mamallapuram, it's nothing but prefabricated structure. Every bit of it can be removed and replaced. So everything is manufactured somewhere or crafted somewhere, brought in and then kept there. And it is there for the past more than 1,000 years. So that is the kind of culture and that is the kind of technology we had. So in the whole thousands of years, probably we have lost that. So can anyone even think of it today? Can even anyone have the patience to do those pillars and columns and beams? Can anyone try to recreate the kind of things that we have done in South Indian temple architecture? Just imagine. Yes, we can do, but do we have the patience to do it? So not that we were not technologically backward. The architects of the past had everything in them. They were anthropologists, they were historians, they were priests or religious people. They were very close to the king. The king listened to them whatever they said, and they knew about material. They were engineers, technologists, sculptors, and they are architects. So they all put together. That's why that is a problem again, comprehensive. So they say jack of all trades, good for nothing. It's not like that. An architect is trained in different things, but very unfortunately the contemporary education is not giving us the fullest view of it. L&T, Larsen and Toubro, have a very huge robotics division. And surprisingly, one day I contacted the robotics division chief. I said I wanted to visit their 3D printed home in Kanchipuram. He said he was shocked. I said, where are you from? I said, I am a director of a school of architecture. I want to see this school. He said, so far no architecture school has requested us, or no architect has wanted to see what we have done. You're the first person calling us. I said, I'm very keen on it because I want to develop that technology in my school. So they made an arrangement, so I went there. It was such a beautiful piece of work. I really fell for it and I appreciated it. I stood before it, took as many pictures as possible. I just loved the texture of the whole 3D printed home, entirely made of concrete. Of course, there were a lot of, in terms of if there was an architect, we could have done it slightly differently, but I'm a modernist basically, I'm a hardcore modernist. So I was reminded of Adolf Loos and read his book called Ornamentation is Crime several times. So even my house in Bangalore is almost like Adolf Loos's house. So there is absolutely no ornamentation on that house. So I left, oh my God, I'm seeing actually my house here with this 3D printed. I would love to do this project. And you won't believe the directors of the robotics division who were there, they were shocked to see that you're the only person who's appreciated our work so far. Really happy, sir, you made my day today. I said, I'm telling this from my heart. This is a wonderful work that you've done. And the other part is that why architects have isolated themselves. Somehow architects feel they are bigger than others, they are better than others, whereas they are not. They are equals with other engineers, sociologists, or any other profession for that matter. So they have to understand that they used to be team leaders. Now they are no more team leaders. They are just part of a team. That is quite frustrating for them. I lived and practiced in a different era where I was like a dominating leader in my own practice. But it's not the same now. But they used to do it because they had the knowledge. They had the the kind of a deeper sense of things that they could see beyond the four walls. So that is what was a problem, you see. So we are not willing to see beyond the walls. So our vision is restricted, and because of that restrictions, we think we are isolated. We have isolated ourselves. So those days, if you look at the temples, like for example, Shore Temple or Brihadiswara Temple in Tanjavur, or you take temples in Madurai, any temple for that matter. So there's all in one person, a sculptor, architect, builder. So of course there are craftsmen who were doing all those sculptures and all that, but he's the man who knew what to come where. So he is also religion. He's also very good in his religion. He knows what to come. Of course, he gets assistance from some of his religious people in the background, but he knew to do all these bits and pieces of these buildings in such a high precision. Now, if you look at Shore Temple in Mamalpuram, it's nothing but prefabricated structure. Every bit of it can be removed and replaced. So everything is manufactured somewhere or crafted somewhere, brought in and then kept there, and it is there for the past more than 1,000 years. So that is the kind of culture and that is the kind of technology we had. So in the whole thousands of years, probably we have lost that. And if you go to Gujarat or Rajasthan for that matter, the stepped wells of Gujarat, what an amazing architecture, So can anyone even think of it today? Can anyone have the patience to do those pillars and columns and beams? Absolutely not. Can anyone try to recreate the kind of things that we have done in South Indian temple architecture? Just imagine. Yes, we can do, but do we have the patience to do it? So not that we were not technologically backward. The architects of the past had everything in them. They were anthropologists, they were historians, they were priests or religious people. They were very close to the king. The king listened to them whatever they said, and they knew about material. They were engineers, technologists, sculptors, and they are architects. So they all put together. That's why an architect is known to be a comprehensivist. That is a problem again, a comprehensivist. So they say jack of all trades, good for nothing. It's not like that. An architect is trained in different things, but very unfortunately the contemporary education is not giving us the fullest view of it, fullest understanding of it. I don't think you can become an architect in 5 years, 1,000 years back. Probably you have to work for nearly about 30, 40 years till you qualify yourself to become an architect to build something. So it was an apprenticeship kind of a thing where he has to go through the curriculum kind of a thing. He has to work with the architect or the sculptor or the chief architect to qualify himself to do something which is better than his master or whatever it is. So I feel that we have really misunderstood what architecture is. And if you ask me the definition of architecture, I don't have any definition of architecture. It's for me, the moment I think of architecture, I float in a different plane. I think differently. I do not exist. And you can pinch me and I don't even feel about it. So completely I am taken into a different level of existence. You understand? So I don't know. So how do we make the new generation think and feel about architecture? That's the greatest task that one has to undertake, and it's a very difficult task. I hope I've answered you. Yes. I think it's a very difficult job to bring this kind of depth of understanding in architecture. It's very difficult. And I think if you look at my projects in the beginning, I think I used to tell my faculty many a times that I did 6 years, 5 years of architecture and 1 year of teaching in India before I went to England. And we did study about Indian traditional architecture, vernacular, we did studio, thesis and everything. I never understood anything in the sense that I was not exposed to my own culture. I did not know the beauty of the temples. I did not know the beauty of these forts. I did document Jalagandeswara temple, Vellore, because it belongs to my native town. I won an award for it, and then I got interested and did a few documentations which took me to national award, the Louis Kahn Award by B.V. Doshi himself. But even then the knowledge was very peripheral, like it was in a different layer. First thing is that we were not taught to go deeper into things and try to get the bottom of it to understand, and we had a lack of time as well, but that was it. But when I reached London, I picked up this book called The Art of Tantra by Philip Rawson. It's a very iconic book. I still have a copy of it, and that book spoke about yantra, tantric art, and yantra as a part of it. Yantra is nothing but an instrument of meditation. So when you start going deeper into it, understand what exactly it explains, then you understand your life. And then as an architect, you think how this life, how this understanding can be interpreted into an architectural space. That was my first project which I did when I came back to India, which was the IGNCA, Indira Gandhi National Center for Arts, where along with two of my junior friends who practice in Coimbatore now. So that was my first experiment. But if you look at that project, there was a lot of symbolism involved in that project. It was a fantastic project. It starts with a dot, with a bindu, nada, the thread, Mula Tirukona, that is a basic triangle, Parimeya, going to higher level, and swastika, then coming back. So you understand the idea of evolution of life from a dot. Evolution of life from a dot, and involution of life back to the dot through swastika, which is the symbol of energy. I mean, one has to understand the essence of it, and unless and otherwise you get to the essence of it, it's very difficult for you to really interpret that idea into architectural space. I read that book twice before I could really understand, and I was wondering why I was not taught this in my School of Architecture. That is what is missing, you see. So the curriculum has to change, interpretation of the curriculum has to change. We have to, first of all, we say charity begins at home. We have to first of all understand what we are, who we are, where we come from, and where we want to go. These are the words of David Ajay, not mine. So we have to understand our own roots. As long as you don't understand your roots, you're going to become architects like what you see today. Okay, so the roots are very important. The roots give us idea. The roots give us the kind of excitement and energy to go beyond the limits. So if you look, just simply look at Sri Yantra. Sri Yantra is supposed to be the most respected yantric form. So it's got a square, it's got a triangular structure in the middle and a dot, then it has a lotus flower on the top. So it simply tells about dot, the life evolves out of two triangles, male and female principles, and life is, the universe is ever expanding. So from a dot to the expanding universe. It also tells about different gates, different directions the world is going, the universe is going. And it talks about how important life is within this entire universe, that dot, that's the bindu. And when you understand that, it becomes so interesting and it absorbs you so deep into it. And you completely start existing in a different world, you know. So that was the inspiration for me, which I got in London reading this book written by a white man. Whereas I didn't have any idea studying 6 years, teaching and studying 6 years of architecture in Chennai or Madras those days. So imagine when I come back, these deep thoughts into my mind, I start my practice. So any line I draw, my mind goes there. So I've been doing that for the past 35 years in majority of the projects, not all of them, majority of the projects. Some projects have to be done just like that. But when the project interests you, you go into it. And that became my thesis, that became my PhD. So what we do is that we are missing that link. That is what we call as cultural intelligence. That link is missing. We all do a very nice presentation, publish books, we read them, do all that kind of stuff, but in reality, how many of us actually understand it? How many of us try to interpret it in the right way? That is the most important. So my job at SEED is to try and sow a right kind of a seed, a different seed, right at the beginning of the course, at the first foundation course. First year we teach them design. So that is the foundation that we want to make it as much strong as possible, so that we at least try to create some sort of future thinkers. We don't want architects to become just draftsmen, just to go and join any multinational and make money, but we want the multinationals to come to us because we have the idea. We want to become thinkers, and we want to become people who can innovate new things, because if we learn the real things of life, I'm sure we can become great architects. We do have great architects in our country, and they're living legends. And we had one of the greatest architects, Charles Correa, who passed away a few years back. Such a wonderful architect. When you look at his buildings, you feel like, your energy goes into a building, like, you get that vibrations. How often you go to a building and feel like you want to come back again? Tell me. How often any architect would like to feel that he would like to come back again and again? There are very few buildings, there are very few architects who create it, you understand? And that's the whole problem. So when we transform ourselves to that stage, then the world is ours. There's nothing about engineering, technology, because it's all part of the whole thing. Yeah, this is an interesting question that it doesn't mean that that if you go abroad, you can learn something extra. You can gain something which is not available here. But definitely you are exposed to the outside world, and you at least know what is happening around you. So when I was in London, I made it a point to meet people. More than my course, what I was doing, it was meeting the people who helped me a lot. Not a single lecture at the RIBA I missed, neither at the AA. AA was almost free. RIBA had to pay a small amount of money. As a student, I get concession, and I would be sitting right in the front row in every one of those lectures. When there is a question and answer session, I would probably be the first person to ask a question. So the only speaker I did not ask a question was Charles Correa when he received his gold medal. But I ran to the lobby. He was coming out, he was walking through the lobby, and I stopped him there. And in fact, I wanted his help in my master's, so which he did in housing. So, one should understand that by educating himself or herself abroad, he is going to gain knowledge. The book which I said, Philip Rawson's book, is not part of my education. It is a book which I picked up in a bookshop and I read it myself. Then I realized that I wasted my 6 years in India. 6 years is a big time, no? So then I came back, started exploring. That's a different story altogether. So a person going abroad is more about exposure, more about meeting people, more about networking people, more about interacting and sharing ideas, all those kind. Not that it doesn't happen in India, it happens in India too. But you have an opportunity. If you get an opportunity to go abroad and study, I think you should, and make use of that opportunity. Whatever time you spend there, put to best use. Try to be as much, make your time possible to meet people and talk to them. And I did that, and that's how I built my network in the past 30 years all over the world. And in terms of education abroad, if you look at their level of thinking and our level of thinking, I can say that philosophically we have an edge over them. We are much in a greater position, but technologically there's a big gap. So not that we have a big gap, but we are closing on to that gap. But there's a lot of hard work to be done. Like for example, you want to go to the level of the Bartlett, or level of the Harvard, MIT, Harvard, or if you want to go to a level of ETH Zurich or Stuttgart University or whatever it is, or maybe NUS Singapore, which is doing a wonderful job. So we have a long way to go, because we have so many schools of architecture here, about nearly 500 schools. And for us, quantity becomes more important than quality. So because of that, we have lost our connection with our own growth in terms of quality thinking and quality education, and gain the right kind of knowledge. But this is a large country with a large population, so we definitely need those kind of things. But at the same time, we must understand that we have to articulate, make our curriculum, especially in architecture in India, to make it a very dynamic curriculum. A curriculum which changes every 4 years, so it should change every year or every 2 years or whatever it is, in order to make a person who is studying that particular curriculum more contextual, more realistic, and more something which he can relate himself to the world that is happening around him. So in that way, I can say that we have great institutions in India. We have great universities, like for example the University of Madras, which was founded in 1856. That was just 2 years after the University of London. It's as old as the University of Madras is such an old university. Now imagine the grade of University of Madras and the grade of University of London. Where are we? Both were almost started at the same time. At one point of time, the University of Madras graduates was considered to be equivalent to Oxford and Cambridge. So where are we today? So what has happened? Where did we lose that connection? How did we lose that the entire idea of our strength of knowledge? So there's something that is going on which we need to really think in a different way. So we have to build our universities, whether private or government owned, state owned universities. We have to really sit back and think where we are, how we should articulate our programs, and how our programs can be effective to the future generations. Today a student has everything on his mobile phone. So if I tell some information, he can Google up and find out whether I am lying or telling the truth. So that is the kind of information technology that is prevalent. So in that case, in that situation, we have to understand that we have to really put in our hard work to move ahead in terms of equalizing with a foreign university. But I must say that if anybody is willing to go abroad for the higher studies, I would definitely encourage them to go as long as they have the money to pay for it, because they are very expensive. But more than anything else, if we can do our universities at par with what is happening there, which is a very hard task, which is the work of the faculty, work of the professors and the students and the entire management, if they do it, nothing like it. It will be wonderful.